Hey fellas, how are you? It's your boy. Here's another video. I'll be giving a brief technical analysis of NIO in this video, the financial report, significant announcements, and my outlook for NIO's future, both short and long term, will all be briefly discussed. I have one more little item to accomplish before I begin, people. I must state up front that I am not a tax expert, financial advisor, or legal expert. This is not intended to be financial, legal, or tax advice. In addition, folks, if you want to see more films like this, please hit the like button. It is advantageous to the community as a whole as well as to me. That being said, folks, NIO did have a somewhat rough day today. Even though we have a few minutes before we close, I just want to discuss the current situation. At $42 or just over $42 per share, things aren't looking too bad overall. This isn't always a terrible thing. I just believe that the auto sector has had a difficult year in 2021. The manufacturing sector has suffered greatly. It's been particularly difficult because the consequences of last year's events are starting to show. Furthermore, it's obvious that the shortage of chips is upsetting people. Following the events in Japan and the current situation in China, there was a significant chip shortage. I am limited by YouTube restrictions in how much information I can share, so I won't go into too much detail. However, I will admit that this year has been really difficult. You could even Google up Tesla, to give an example. Looking at Tesla's chart right now, we can see that it peaked around $900 and fell as low as the $500 level if we go back to the one-year chart. It happened during the crash in March. Examine NIO. NIO had the exact same experience. Just above the $30 line of support, it actually reached the $60s before collapsing as low as the $30s, with plenty of support around the $30 area. If anything, it started to get better in July, especially with the release of the latest reports. However, it has remained largely unchanged overall. Although they exceeded their earnings, it wasn't a particularly good day. As a result, it has been a bit of a red day. Additionally, stock prices usually decline during earnings, and that's the unsettling reality. However, it does not imply that anything is altered. Naturally, this does not imply that NIO is a terrible business. It has enormous promise for the future and the support of the government. Furthermore, I firmly believe that NIO will soar in the long run. It will, however, be quite difficult for it to truly overcome its line of resistance in the near future. It's going to be difficult for it to rise above the 40s. By the end of the year, I do see it getting into the 50s. I'm not kidding, though. This has been a difficult year overall. Furthermore, they're still recuperating from what transpired. However, their sales data reveals that they are currently in the recovery stage. As of right now, their market capitalization is $69 billion. Haha, $69. In spite of this, the market value is viewed as overpriced, and the outlook is extremely negative. Nevertheless, given that the market is overvalued overall, I don't believe a word these analysts say. I'm merely trying to warn folks not to believe everything they read or see online, and that NIO still has a lot of potential for the future. Let's now examine some of NIO's most intriguing facts. NIO's market capitalization is currently around $60 billion, while Tesla's is $702 billion. Furthermore, that is still a considerable amount. Actually, it's not that far from GM. It is thus comparatively high. However, their entire quarterly earnings report shows that in the second quarter of 2021, they made 21,000 deliveries. Tesla had reached 200,000. Although Tesla has been doing around 9 times as good, it still has over roughly 12 times the market capitalization, even if its sales are 9 times higher. That makes it a truly noteworthy and intriguing thing. However, it's clear that NIO is evolving swiftly and growing in prominence in China. In fact, I don't believe NIO is much overpriced. This will be a discount, if anything, for where it's going to go in the future. Furthermore, it is evident from glancing at that there are a lot of fascinating topics being mentioned. NIO was not reported if you check at the price forecast earnings for 2022. However, its projected earnings for 2025 were 37.7 compared to 50.5 for Tesla, and it was evident that there were a ton of comparisons when you looked at all of this data. But that being said, based on their PE ratios, I don't think things are too bad. However, I would want to discuss something very significant. With the exception of Q1 2020, their deliveries have been increasing over the past year or so. Everyone is aware of what transpired. However, every quarter their numbers are increasing steadily and very gradually. Now, given the circumstances and the paucity of chips, their Q2 growth wasn't particularly strong. However, considering how much better their numbers are, it's not always a terrible thing. And because of it, I remain extremely optimistic about NIO's short and long-term prospects. Now, by near term, I don't mean a few days or weeks from now. I'm only saying that it might happen in a few months. The stock price may see a minor breakout, in my opinion. However, I don't think it will blow up the way some people think it may. NIO, in my opinion, is a longer play. You must exercise patience if you want to see NIO experience several significant developments and if you want to see the stock price rise. You just need to be patient because, as you keep in mind, NIO is still a relatively new business. It was only recently formed in 2014, which is still a very young age. One could even consider it to be a startup. It's definitely not a legitimate startup, but it's almost there. And if you go back to around 2 years ago, it was a penny stock, and it has just arrived at its current location. They succeeded in raising a sizable sum of money for numerous events. Additionally, they did expand to Norway a few months ago. All of it is proceeding rather nicely, and their brand is getting stronger globally. I want to talk about something incredibly significant and vital right now regarding NIO, their sales. All right, what? If you could see it right now, the white stands for 2018. 2018, 2018, all right? 2019 is represented by the pale blue. It was evident that their sales were rather flat in 2019 before they began to slightly increase. Next, consider the year 2020. They started 2020 with a comparatively high volume of sales. The crash that occurred ultimately caused it to crash, and we already know what transpired in 2020. It started to increase after that, increasing. Now have a look at their whereabouts in December 2020. The increase was clearly visible over there. Check out the red thing over here. The color red represents 2021. Look at them, they were killing it in January. When compared to the previous 2 years when they were dealing with all of these challenges and the shortage of chips, they excelled. NIO is still quite powerful, and their foundations are excellent. They are ascending. For the first quarter, and even the first two, they have been relatively unchanged. However, June is actually a pretty good month, and if you take a look at them, they have sold over 18,000 ES6 models this year alone, 14,000 EC6, 8,000 ES8. There will be a new sedan available from them. It's quite astonishing how this company has grown, how well they understand their core values, how well they serve their customers, and how much more convenient their battery changing technology is for China. Furthermore, keep in mind that, as of right now, China accounts for 1 out of every 2 EV sales worldwide. China accounts for 1 of every 2 of them. In fact, China accounts for 1 in every 2 Tesla sales, or even more likely than that. I am aware that there is unfavorable emotion towards China because of its tremendous growth and potential. While it's not a bad firm, I won't necessarily say that it is. There are still incredible aspects about it. It appears extremely nice. Their revenue is rising. They're succeeding. Their foundations are outstanding. Their customer service is outstanding. People are ecstatic. Additionally, NIO's brand has been getting better and better. After all of that, folks, I simply had one more thing to say, and that is the truth things are occurring that are beyond NIO's control. Thus, consider what occurred this year, for example. In actuality, this was only published a few days ago. Despite a 5.4% increase in consumer prices in July, core inflation increased less than anticipated. In other words, core inflation in the United States grew over the past year to almost 4.3%. That is to say, it dropped to 4.3% from 4.5%. That being said, even if it was lowered, it is still fairly high. It's still high because the US and this region should have strong rates of 2 to 2.5% inflation on average. However, anything higher than 4 is about twice as high as it ought to be. Consequently, a large number of institutional investors have poured money into bonds and other more alluring investments as inflation rises, and the entire EV market has found it to be incredibly difficult. That's one of the main reasons NIO finds it so difficult. For the whole EV market, this year has been quite difficult. However, I have to admit that NIO has no control over these events. In light of this, my price forecast for NIO is that they will continue to be strong and persevere despite external events outside their control. NIO will reach his 50s by the end of the year, in my opinion. I don't think it will actually grow all that much because, as you may recall, NIO Dave will be arriving in early January of the next year, just a few months away. Thus, a run-up might occur based on that. I could picture it getting to 50. All right, I see that NIO will reach the mid to high 40s very soon, and I'll see NIO. I also anticipate NIO reaching almost 50 by the end of the year. And based on their projections and progress, I think NIO will reach $100 in the upcoming year. They will absolutely destroy the data that they release, in my opinion. By the end of the following year, I believe NIO will be doing really well. NIO, I want your $100. That being stated, please excuse me while I demand at least $100 from you guys. I continue to be really enthusiastic on the stock. I still firmly believe in it. And I have to warn you that if we want to see significant progress, we must exercise patience. I sincerely appreciate your attention, everyone, and I'll see you on the next.